We're gonna call the Business Development and Job Creation Committee to order, and we're gonna be hearing a bill today. This bill originated from testimony that we heard in this committee regarding some of our brownfield property out there, and how we could hopefully make a few changes that would help small businesses, people all over the state, take that property that is now under or not utilized, and hopefully get it back into the hands of some folks who would take it and turn it back into productive property. So with that, we're going to hear House Bill 1102. And Chairman Smith, would you come up and, yes, or wherever you, from podium or from the your choice. That's fine, up front. All right. Yes, absolutely. If you're welcome to bring up. Okay. Yeah. Well, no, we want just two. A pleasure. Now, are we on right there, Madam Chair?
Now we
okay.
Are. First of all, thank you for your time and allowing me to present to you today our House bill. And I've got lots of different folders here. 1102. And I've sent some different materials to you explaining, or you've already heard it in testimony, so I don't want to keep repeating myself and confusing the issue. But now I've left my other here it is. I'm sorry, y'all. I've had all different kind of things here. In 1102, it provides for a 30-day grace period, and you can see that in Section 1. After the purchase for buyers of qualifying property to seek a limitation of liability and to provide automatic liability to future recipients of qualified properties, including immediate previous owner. So the second part of the bill is in Section 2, and it is the one that protects the previous owner, and as long as they've met the required cleanup requirements from EPD. So now what I want to explain to you even further is there's no conversation that takes place with EPD until after it's been purchased. In that 30-day grace period, the new buyer would approach EPD about getting to be part of the program. The way it is right now, and why this is important for our small businesses and for job development, is that you have to purchase the property in advance of buying it. So there's no incentive to do that, and so that's why this is needed legislation. We also have had this program was first developed in 2002. I came on board in 2005 and carried the brownfield legislation that amended with gas stations, the petroleum tanks underneath. That became part of the brownfield legislation. So that explains why I'm sitting here talking to y'all about brownfield. I do want to add a caution here. This is Code Section 12. I had a big, huge file. I thought about bringing it over to show y'all. Code Section 12 is like Pandora's box. So the scope of what we're dealing with here is that 30-day liability period protection after you purchase a property. We're going from before you even buy the property, and this legislation is changing it to after you purchase it. It's an incentive to have people want to revitalize our small communities, downtown areas. It can be as small as a town or an incorporated area to huge areas like Atlantic Station, the green belt around Atlanta. We've done 400 properties since it's around, approximately since it started in 2002. But since 08, there has not been much interest at all. And I think all of us can look to our town centers. We can see railroad tracks. We can see cotton mills. We can see ginning mills. We can see those types of things that are empty structures in our downtown areas. So that would qualify, as well as your just your dry cleaners or your gas stations. And to that, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, may I ask Mark Smith?
Yeah, and I want to follow up on a point that you
Okay.
just made. I want to make sure this committee knows that we're not, and I would not go into a lot of, like you said, the Pandora's box. We're not changing anything. We're just simply changing this window as far as getting into the program here. We're just, there's nothing, and I want to make sure this committee understands this, nor do I want to, from talking with the chairman of Natural Resources, get into any of the underlying issues of the environmental law. We're just simply changing this window for for someone to be eligible to apply for this this act here. So I want to make very clear
It
that.
is purely an incentive,
Mhm.
and it also is going to be a job producer, large or small. Also, we need to understand that when this first came out, we were kind of in front of this issue, and like we just were very aggressive with it back in '02, and that's why it's been so successful. Other states have figured it out, and some of our other states are offering this incentive, which makes it harder for us in the competition arena.
Okay.
And
Before we go on, any other questions from the committee to the chair? All right, Madam Chair, if you will.
this is Mark Smith.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
He's my computer.
Okay.
The subject matter.
I'm Chief of the Land Protection Branch at the Environmental Protection Division, and the Brownfields program has been in the branch since 2002 when it was created, and I've been working with it since 2004 when I became the branch chief that housed that program. And it's great, one of the great success stories. I get to wear a black hat and a white hat. And the Brownfields is the white hat, where we take property that is contaminated, somebody who wants to increase the use of it, reclaim that property, make it safe for reuse, comes in and puts investor dollars into cleaning it up so the state doesn't have to get involved with it. The black hat is where I go to the person who caused the contamination or somebody who acquired the property without being in the Brownfields program and say, congratulations, you're a responsible party. You now must clean up that property going forward. This provision of 30 days has come about because we have this category called what I call reluctant sellers. They don't have the money to do cleanup. They've never really sampled their property. Georgia has no law requiring that you sample your property. But they're afraid if somebody comes in to buy it and samples it, they'll find something bad. They'll tell EPD about it. Then something happens before they close. Financing falls through. Something happens. EPD's holding a report that shows contamination. The white knight that was going to buy it and clean it up goes away, and the seller is stuck with it. So some people are sitting on property afraid to move forward. This will let those properties, which is going to be a small percentage of the overall properties, will let them come into the program by not giving the report to EPD until after the closing date occurs, which will give them that 30-day window to bring it in. So we think it will not be popular for all sites. I think most people will want to be in the program before they acquire it. But for those that are problematic with reluctant sellers, I think it's going to help solve the problem and move these forward.
All right. Well, thank you.
And the 30-day grace period, my question was, why would someone just have 30 days after they purchase it? And the explanation is EPD doesn't come into its role until after it's purchased, but a prospective buyer, is going to be doing their research, looking at the soil, doing samples and such as that. And this 30-day period is they apply to get into the program. They have 30 days to apply to get into the program.
Okay.
Did I touch?
That's good.
And the super fund, just a second to explain the super fund, because there was a question related to that. And it really is two different pieces of this. So.
We're talking about the Superfund. Usually we're talking about the state Superfund or the hazardous site inventory as opposed to the federal Superfund, which we're not talking about today. When you discover contamination on your property, you're actually an owner and you're handed a report that says there's contamination over certain levels. The law requires that you notify EPD, and we evaluate the site to determine if it warrants listing on our state Superfund. That process is looking at the site, and it's not just the amount of contamination, it's whether somebody has access to the site, a child can go play on the site and ingest contaminated dirt, or there's drinking water wells in the area where their groundwater that they're depending on for their drinking water source could be contaminated. So we evaluate those notifications when they come in. And about 1 out of 5, 20% of the sites have enough risk potential that we listed on the state Superfund. So 4 out of the 5 sites we look at, there's no exposure pathway, so they don't list on the state superfund. If they don't list, the state's not involved in cleanup anymore. We're out of the picture with it, and that's where brownfields comes in and really picks that up. People want to make the property safe for reuse. They want this limitation of liability that Georgia law provides. So they're willing to do a certain amount of cleanup at the site to get the EPD's endorsement and sign off on it, and to really invest in Georgia's future when they do that. So state superfund, about 20% of the sites that are contaminated get listed just because of exposure pathway, not necessarily because it's a certain concentration of the chemical that's found.
And if you're in that superfund, then you're not eligible.
You are eligible.
You are eligible
the site
still
is
for the.
Still eligible.
Okay. All right.
And the state superfund is not just abandoned property. It can be property that they know the owner of, but it's at a level where it qualifies as super. Is that correct?
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
I didn't know I knew this much.
Any questions from committee members to Madam Chair? Mark, thank you. I certainly appreciate this. I know the chair and I have spoken about this, and I think this is a great bill. Real quick, before the committee takes any action, is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak to this bill?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, we have the honor of representing the Georgia Brownfield Association, and this is Howard Lawley, the director of the association. We appreciate Madam Chair bringing this bill, and appreciate the committee hearing it. I think it's a great example of allowing more properties to go into public-private partnership. It's been very, very good for both.
Thank you.
So you want to qualify, these dollars are going to be spent are private dollars. There's no state or federal dollars spent on this cleanup.
Okay. All right. We have any action? Now time for the committee to take action. We have any motion or?
I move to pass.
All right. We have a motion, a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the bill, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. All right, and it does pass. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mark, for coming and testifying. So can you get that to, hey. There being no further business, we are adjourned.